Welcome to this episode of the Women in Money Cafe. Today on the sofa, I've got Emily and Jennifer keeping me company, but we've got a special guest with us today. And I'm really looking forward to the next 30, 40 minutes because we've got Zoe Brinn joining us. Zoe is a fascinating person anyway, and she's dead cool. And I like chatting with her. But she's coming along and she's going to be talking to us about a subject that generally is not going to attract people to the Women in Money Cafe. If this is something that's affected you in your life, you're probably not listening to us. But after you hear about the episode, hopefully you will now become a loyal listener and we will be able to interact and communicate with you a lot better after Zoe's shared some of her experiences and learnings with us. But before we go into that, I'm just going to check in with Jennifer at the other end of the sofa. Jennifer, how are you today?
Yeah, not too bad. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good, thanks. And Emily.
I'm good. Looking forward to this episode. Hi, Zoe. Hi.
It's going to be really cool. And then our special guest is Zoe. So, Zoe, welcome to the Women in Money Cafe podcast.
Hello, Julie. It's lovely to be here.
All right. Thank you very much for having us. So, I kind of hinted that you're going to be talking about something a little bit special with us today. But I think let's just tease everybody a bit longer. What would be really good is just tell us a little bit about yourself, Zoe. What do you do? Because I know you and I know you're an amazing businesswoman, but the listeners.
Well, first of all, I'm so glad that you called me cool because my 13-year-old has told me in quite a determined way that I'm not. So I now have proof from Julie herself. Yeah. So I'm Zoe Brinn and I am a conscious leaders consultant and a system strategist. So I work with entrepreneurs and business owners, and I consult with them and build their systems so that they can create a team and they can consciously improve their businesses and the way that their team culture is put together. They can recruit and get new people on board, and they can also put the systems in place and the training in place for that team so that they have a much more seamless working environment and everyone knows what they're doing, really. And I help business people to put that into place and implement that within their businesses.
Now, see, this is where what you do is really cool because all of that sounds reasonably simple, doesn't it? I have a business. I want people to work in my business with me. Let's make the business bigger and let's have processes. But we're humans and
Yes.
humans, they don't always behave rationally, do they?
No. And there's a huge, I suppose, well, there's a couple of things really. Sometimes we, as business owners, we've gone into business to do something we love and to give back to society, build a business of our own, make money, etc. But we haven't really thought about whether we're going to manage other people and how we're going to do that, how we're going to treat them. And even though we all, essentially we all think we're kind, there is something about making sure that you are diverse enough, that you use the right language, but also that you are specifically looking for the right people that fit within your values and your mission so that you retain your staff, so that they become productive and so that they're happy in what they do, because a happy workforce is a much more productive workforce. And the systems kind of sit on top of that to make sure that that productivity is facilitated and everyone knows what they're doing. Because let's face it, you can't very well turn around and say, this person isn't working very well for me if that person doesn't really know what they should be doing and it's not clear enough for them. So yeah, so there's a few different aspects to it. There's the skills part. So you might think, actually, I'm rubbish at delegating. I need to learn some ways of doing that. And we've all got such strengths in our business, but for us to think that we are, strong across the board is sometimes quite, it's not true, is it? So I help people who are not necessarily struggling with their leadership, but definitely feel that they could make that working environment and the culture within their companies better for everyone.
So, one of the things that I've heard you say, and it really struck me. I thought, oh, I think I might be guilty of this. And I'm going to share it if that's all right, because I can't be the only person. And you were talking there about when you struggle to delegate. And like, let's say you've got a team or an outsourced team or whatever, and like and it's just not quite working right. And you've asked somebody to do something and they're kind of doing it, but it still doesn't feel quite right. And one of the things that I heard you say was about is sitting down and having a conversation with them and making sure that they understand they have complete permission to own that task and make it
Yeah.
their own, rather than they're like a little subset of you trying to do it the way you would do it and check it in with you. It's just they have complete ownership. And it struck me, I thought, oh God, how often does that happen? Where you've asked someone to
Mm.
do something and you're like, you walk away, you feel dissatisfied with the way it happened. And
Yeah.
it comes
No,
back to this
absolutely.
communication, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, definitely. And when you delegate something to someone, you are giving it to them. So you are saying, "Here we are. This is a child. I trust you to do this." And if that feeling of trust isn't two-way, then they may go through that task thinking, "What is it she wants? Shall I try and guess what Julie wants me to do? Shall I ask her? Will I look like I'm asking too many things? Will it?" So you haven't got. If you say, "Own this," anything you need, come to me, and you leave yourself open to any difficulties they might come across, but you give it to them and say, "Run with that, own it." Then you give them permission to create something that it could be that is possible, is better than you could have done yourself, which is in an ideal business is exactly what you need. Delegating tasks to people, getting them off your shoulders doesn't mean, like you said, it doesn't mean you're giving it to someone for them to do exactly as you would do it. You're giving it to them so that they can inject some more innovation, creativity, if that's what they feel it needs.
With the
So
greatest of respect, if I'm giving it to someone else to do it, it's because I'm not very good at it. So we definitely don't
there's
want it
that.
done the way I would do it.
There's that as well. I've come across quite a few different business owners over the past few years, and you do get some business owners who think, right, I do everything the way I want it and I want it to stay like that. And that's in some ways stunts what you do, because there are specialists out there who do things better than we do. Yeah, even if we do it well. But also you have got that idea of, and I do this with my finances, but I can't, if I feel I can't do something well, give it to someone who's great at it, because essentially that part of my business then becomes great, right? And by letting people put their creative flair and their specialism into your business, we can only get better.
Right. So I'm just curious then, because you can be really insightful with the observations that you make when you're talking to people about their businesses. And one of the things that you mentioned briefly before, which I know loads of people listening are going to want to know the secret sauce of, and that is about recruiting. When you're trying to build a team. I mean, I've worked for big businesses, I've worked for small businesses, and I think one of the most challenging aspects of being a leader is actually recruiting the right people into the right role. I don't know, Jennifer, you're nodding your head there. Is that a yes?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so hard to either get a good judge of character along with getting a good judge of how they're going to take to the process and what you want to do. Because people in interviews sometimes, so they're always going to put their best self forward. But whenever they're actually in the role, it can be completely different.
And I know,
Yeah,
Emily, even going
absolutely.
back to your corporate career, you must have witnessed some recruiting nightmares.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started on a graduate scheme at the Royal Bank of Scotland, and you can imagine that, okay, it was a long time ago, but they did still have in those days psychometric testing and things. And they thought that they would find the right type of person to do exactly that kind of role that they wanted on the grad scheme by people answering a whole load of questions and doing lots of tasks. And to some extent, yes, but I think what they failed to understand, especially in these very, very large organizations, is that within those organizations, there's lots of different types of roles and there's lots of different types of teams. And you could be you could be an amazing person to work as an individual and get stuff done. But if you're not good at working in a team, you're not going to be the right person for that job. So it's not even just the task stuff, it's the behavioral stuff and all of that. I'm sure a lot of money has been wasted on recruitment where it's just been not the right fit. So I think you've got your work cut out. It's an amazing opportunity for you, Zoe, and I bet you're having to bat the customers away at the moment.
So what you were saying about the recruitment, it is really, you hit the nail on the head there when you kind of like that your traditional or your corporate way of doing it would be to test people, to give them a series of questions, to ask what they've trained in, what skills they've got, the harder skills, what kind of background they have and experience they have. And of course, all those things are relevant up to a point. But if we view it differently and we think about what our own business contains, who it contains already, and how we can develop that business by finding the right person, the essential components to the person that we're going to find is going to be whether they understand what we do, whether they are going to be on the mission with us to get to where we want to be, whether they share our values as a company, as a business, as an entrepreneur, or even as a person. Yeah, because if they're that important to you, it might be that you are looking for, a specific type of person. And once you get that personality right, you get that link. And I'm not talking about whether you gel with someone or not necessarily, whether you get the right type of person into your business. There are some of the other things that you can teach. Now, I'm not saying for a minute that you should be going out there and saying, right, I need someone for tech, but it doesn't matter whether they're good at tech or not, because of course there are those factors into it. But there are so many people out there looking for jobs. We are not short of freelancers. We're not short of employees. If you are going to find someone for your business, making sure that you are presenting yourself, you're presenting your brand clearly enough so that you attract the right people who are going to apply for your job because they want to work in your business, not because they just want a job. So when I put myself out there and I hire my next team member, they look at me online, or the job advert, or my messaging, or they might follow me on social media, and they know essentially what my business is made up of and what's really important to me. And if they align with those values, then it's going to be much easier for them to understand when I'm in business of where I want my business to grow. And that part is really, really important. So finding the right person with, of course, some of the right skills that you can then put into place within your business, that you can then not so much mold. We don't want to be molding people, but you can skill some of the things that they might need, but their essential being is there. So looking for the right person means the actual person that you will fit within your business and within your values and work with you towards your mission and towards your goals, as opposed to someone who might have a great big list of qualifications and skills.
Okay, now that's really interesting, because as I'm listening to you talk, a question formed in my head. I thought, I'm going to ask Zoe this. And as I continued to listen to you talk, I thought, I think I know the answer to this now. I was going to ask you what's one of the most common mistakes that, small businesses make when they go to recruit. And then I listened to you talk, and I thought, I think I might know one of the answers to this. So I am a small business. I do not regularly hire people. So when I come to hire someone, I'm going to look at how everybody else does it, which means I'm going to appear very grey. I'm going to have the very grey job description. I'm going to have all the very grey information, and it's just going to be dull as. And maybe what I should do is turn up as me and my business, and I need someone that can help me with this. As opposed to, here are the list of the competencies. Here are the list of the skills and the qualifications you should have. these are the working hours, blah, blah, blah. But actually just turn up and go, hello.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, if you put in a written advert out there, you might decide to put like a short condensed version of the person that you're looking for with regards to skills, etc. But actually have something in there like, why not have a written letter in there? Dear potential applicant, this is what I like, this is what I do, this is who I am. Why not put like a little video in there of, I want you to connect with me. So, feel free to send me a video back, for example. And what I see a lot of people doing, actually more so in the online world, is kind of just going on recommendation because someone else they know has a great VA, OBM, whatever. I'll work with them but essentially we need to make sure that they fit our business. They fit what we're doing. And so even though recommendations are good, and obviously doing your due diligence, etc., is good, you need to be finding your own people and making sure that you're reaching out and creatively so that if part of your personality, Julie, I'm not saying it is, but if part of your personality is using the odd naughty word.
Do you want an effing job in financial services?
No, but maybe you wouldn't go that far, but you'd show your personality, wouldn't you? Show your, because that's your brand, your business, your personality is what we want to attract people to.
Okay, I think you've just given us some of your secret sauce there. And I was thinking, right, I wonder how many other times we do this in business when it's not something that we normally do. So we go with the grey generic version of it. Just because we go and look at what big corporates do, like, okay, well, I'm going to copy that in my little SME. I'm like, well, I'm a little SME. I don't have to do it the way the big corporates do it. I can do it how I want. That's quite liberating.
People doing contracts. I'm not saying that you should not make them legal contracts, but people find a template and kind of change a few words, and that will do me. We need to be doing stuff specifically for our business in order to make sure that we're growing as a business, but also so that we put our stamp on it. Yeah, so that we put our name on things, that we start with our new recruits on a good foot, that they're excited to work with us, that they're enthusiastic. Yeah.
And it's interesting because having worked for blue chip companies, yes, it's expensive hiring people. But as a small business, it's risky hiring people. Corporates can afford to make expensive mistakes. As small businesses, we can't. So just, tips like this from you are invaluable. And I think what you've really clearly demonstrated so far, Zoe, is your credentials, right? That it's my podcast, so I'm allowed to swear that Zoe is shit hot at what she does. Right? You're incredibly insightful, and your ability, and I know because I've seen you in action, your ability to communicate with people and to rise above the emotion of a situation and to manage people is phenomenal. So we've got you up here as this paragon of superwoman businesswoman. All right. That escalated quickly, didn't it? Which, you can see what I'm doing here. I'm circling round to some of the challenges that you've faced to get yourself to there. So there was one really specific topic that we wanted to touch on, and that was that you have dyscalculia. And we were saying before we started recording, it's not something I knew much about until you mentioned it to me. So I went off and did the Google, but it's probably much better if you sort of introduce listeners to what dyscalculia is, because we've touched on ADHD in previous episodes. And I just think it's really important for us to try and make ourselves more accessible and more aware, more knowledgeable of all the things that make it difficult for people to interact with money. And this is a bit of a biggie.
It is. So calcula, as a lot of people kind of connect it to dyslexia, it's on a similar path, but it's very different in that it makes it really difficult to process number. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you are bad at maths. So for example, we know generally the population know a bit more about dyslexia than they do dyscalculia. So if you were dyslexic, it doesn't mean you can't read, right? it means that maybe when you read, you find it frustrating that you can't read big, long passages at once. It might mean that you not need a particular font. But it doesn't mean you can't understand. And a lot of the time, the majority of the time, it doesn't mean that you can't articulate, you can't use your other reading skills. And quite similarly, dyscalculia doesn't mean that you can't add up, take away, this kind of thing. It just means that you have processing problems when it comes to remembering numbers. For example, one of the most simple things is your times tables. So, you know how we kind of go 2, 4, 6, 8, yeah? Now, that's not too bad because it's a pattern, it's got a rhythm. But if you say once times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, that gets difficult for me because I'm having to say so many numbers.
Oh.
And the numbers don't process.
Right.
So sometimes it's about the quantity of number that I'm using. Sometimes it's about remembering the number. It's that there's some kind of, and obviously because I was just going, I can't actually recall any of this stuff, but there is that puzzle that goes, think of a number, take away the first number you thought of, add your age, that kind of thing. Absolutely impossible. Because
that sounds like it's going to be carnage for you.
It is. So think of a number, I got that far. Times it by 2, okay, I got that far. And then it said, now add your age. And like, hang on a sec, how old am I? It's quite because there are just too many numbers. I have been known to not know how old I was, not know how old my mum is, not know how old my children are, which that one normally gets quite a few kind of funny looks. Not remember my PIN number, which, you use over and over and over again. Best thing that happened to me was the beep thing, because
contactless.
It's contactless. I could put my PIN number in 8 times a day, and the 9th time I can't remember it. So it's quite difficult to explain to people who don't quite understand or don't have these problems how this might affect you and how it affects other things that you do in your life. So, for example, a couple of years ago, I went into Boots, the chemist, and I got a few things. I went to the counter. It was Christmas time. I beeped my card. The lady said, "Oh, you need to put it in." Put it in. I put in the PIN number. It said it didn't work. And I immediately thought, oh my goodness, not money in my account. I didn't really think this through because my number problem made me anxious immediately. So I whipped the card out and put another card in, and I can't remember more than one PIN number. So I put that in, and I was thinking, what are you doing, Zoe? What are you doing? And then I thought, I've got it on my phone somewhere. Have I written it down? So I started looking through my phone, and I looked up at the lady, and by this time I'm really quite anxious, thinking this woman thinks I've stolen someone's credit card. That's all the thing, because it just amplifies. So something, if you walked into a shop and you put the wrong PIN number in, you'd go, oh, hang on a sec. And it probably wouldn't faze you that much. For me, the anxiety of not ever being able to remember that number ever again in my life is just huge.
Wow. Emily, you looked like you had a question there a minute ago.
I did, yeah. It was when you were talking about all the little things not little, not to make it seem smaller than it is, but all the things that you had issues with. And I've done a very, very small amount of research before this podcast, but I saw that one of the things that people with dyscalculia have is that they have difficulty with, now I could hardly say it, so I think I might have dyslexia, but I think it's subitizing. What does subitizing mean? Is that one of the things that you just explained?
Subitizing.
Subitizing. If you don't know, don't worry. I'll Google it and come back later.
How do you spell it?
Subitizing. Subitizing. I first read it as substituting or something.
Okay, I've Googled it. It's the ability to look at a small number of objects and instantly recognize how many objects there are without needing to count.
Yeah. Oh, no.
What is this magic?
Yeah, because I've seen on some tests and things that my children have done in the past, when you have like 5 dots and you're against the clock. So they're seeing how quickly you answer things. Say you've got 5 dots and it says, how many dots are there? And if you take 2 wrong, you've obviously got an issue with sabotizing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I'd probably do small numbers, 1, 2, 3. But there are certain numbers that I have more difficulty with than others. 9s I don't have such a difficulty with.
Oh, really?
But 7s and 8s I do. It's just, and that's just quirk of the, it's like, I suppose someone with dyslexia saying, I always see an A back to front or whatever, it's one of those kind of quirks to things. But yeah, I've never really had trouble with 9. And for some reason, even though I know that my 4 times table is every other 2 times table, I still can't do 4 times table. I go 2 in my head, 4 out loud, 6 in my head, 8 out loud. But yes, knowing how many things are in one place, it can do the small numbers. But once there's probably more than 5, and even though 6 is an even number, I would look at that and think, that's crazy. There's the answer is too many.
I don't know if this is normal, but when I'm looking at a spreadsheet and it hasn't got the commas in for the larger numbers, I start to go into a bit of a panic because I think,
oh yeah,
is that 1 million or is that 100,000? And I mean, to count that many number of zeros without them being divided up into 3s.
That's another thing that is really difficult, is physically counting numbers within a sequence. So, if you've got 10,000 and someone says, how many digits? I can count the 1 and I can count the next 0. But after that, I don't know, unless I actually put something up against it, like a ruler, so that I know I've moved on to the next one. All the others appear, I mean, there could be 2 or 20. They're kind of, they don't blur as much, but my brain can't move on to the next one if it's the same number.
I think I have that though. So either I have dyscalculia, or whether there's maybe an element of that being reasonably normal. I don't know. What do you guys think, since you've got 4 of us here? Come on, fess up.
Say normal. So see if something doesn't have a comma in it. Absolutely, you are having to cover things to go, is that million? Is it 10 million? What is it I'm looking at? Because it's just, particularly if there are lots of different numbers, it's not as bad. But if it's all zeros, yeah.
Do you know what I was thinking of as you say this? It's like I'm locked out of my Tesco Club Card app. And so they want me to give them the 15th number, the 18th number, and the 19th. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, so I think Emily, I have a count in my head.
That's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing. I mean, but I suppose the difference is that I give the example of zeros, and it happens with anything that really, for me, anything that's double number or more of. So if it was 66 or 666 in a row on a credit card, for example, when I read that number out, I don't know how many times I've said the number 6, and that's kind of what I mean, I suppose.
So,
but yeah,
you've given us some real life examples there of the kind of challenges that, that everyday life can throw up for you. I guess as I'm listening to you talk, what I'm thinking about is, right, so as a profession, our whole job is built around numbers. And like the reason we do the podcast is because we want to empower women around money. And this is going to be a really big block for someone to actually engage with their money if they've got this. So I was just wondering if you've got any tips or experiences that you can share that would help listeners that are maybe, they're listening to you talking, it's really resonating with them. So I'd like, to hear what your tips are. And then I think probably what I'd like to do after that is just try and understand how we as a profession can present differently to people. Bear in mind that this is just going to make some people's heads explode, what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, generally stay out of conversation with people like you guys. just in case someone asks me a mathematical question that I can't answer. No, but it does. I mean, if anyone is listening, and they have felt like this, have felt anxious around number, have felt anxious around people asking them specifically to like call out a number or tell them, and they get that kind of horrible feeling that they might get something wrong. There is a loads you can do, but you might have experienced I mean, I know I did. So for the first part of my life, because I didn't know I had dyscalculia, I had a lot of problems because of my dyscalculia. So I also have ADHD, but I had trouble going to school because a lot of the questions I got asked, made me feel anxious. And a lot of it I masked, as a lot of us do, as I was growing up. And I found little ways to around things, writing things down, sticking stuff on my hand, and making up little rhymes for things so that I can remember, singing phone numbers, that kind of thing. But as I got older and I realized that I did have dyscalculia, this didn't go away. It wasn't like magically, now you know what the problem is. Ta-da. It's kind of, you can now embrace it, because I had that whole embarrassment around it also. I found out that I had dyscalculia the same year that I trained to be an English teacher. And so they ran normal tests, regular tests for dyslexic, only dyslexic. They didn't actually run a test for dyscalculia. And mine came back as abnormal. And I was like, no, I know I've got dyslexic people in my family, but I most definitely do not believe that I'm dyslexic. So they took me in and they did these number tests on me. And then I was diagnosed and went through a series of tests, and I was diagnosed with dyscalculia. This made a lot more sense to me. It made me being able to, even though there wasn't a lot of information out there, I was able to access some sort of information, and I was able to put things in place that would help me, knowing that there wasn't really something wrong with my maths, right? But I still felt ashamed. And I went through the whole of my teaching career never telling anyone. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell a pupil. I didn't tell another teacher. I basically just hid it from people. I was quite good at percentages. So when I worked out math, when
you're marking papers,
results, when I was marking papers, I could do that. So what else did I need it for as an English teacher? Not really anything. Kind of, not anything. And anything else I could kind of get away with. So when I set up my business, I'm in my 4th year now. So when I set up my business originally, I was still really in this thought, I can't go into the business world with people knowing that I don't process number. I'm leaving myself open to all sorts of things. I'm leaving myself open to being taken advantage of. I'm also leaving myself open to not running my business well and it going under very early. So I still had a little bit of that. But I decided after a little while, I needed to talk about this. I needed to let people know that you can run a successful business and you can run it well, whatever your difficulty is. And for me, it is number. So there are a few things you can do as a business, but I have no problem with Excel sheets and I have no problem with data. So if you have kind of steered away from anything that involves number, I would suggest that you try and embrace lots of different things in order for you to find what works for you. So I use Excel documents very well. I handle data very well. And because of that, basically what I can do is I can set up an Excel document for pretty much anything that has that calculation in there. So don't actually have to deal with the number. The number just pops up. And I believe that that's right. That is the correct number. I obviously have someone who checks it for things like books, etc. But I think most of us in business do have some sort of accountancy, bookkeeping, etc. Especially if it's not our specialty. So there are things like that. There are also things you can do to exercise your number. So I've got a memory book, and as we said about how many things in a space. I go through this and I do exercise. You can find them online. It's a bit like a Sudoku book. It's memory. And that helps to exercise the part of your brain that will effectively train you into being.
Is this like number yoga?
It's a bit like your number yoga. Yeah.
Is it wrong that I want to have a go just for fun?
Yeah. You'd probably whiz through a whole book that's taken me like 2 months.
I'm not actually that good at maths. It's surprising how many people that do our job aren't that good at maths.
I'm definitely not that great at maths, but I think probably what I don't have, luckily, because I've just taught myself out of it, is I don't have the anxiety around the numbers. I just persevere. But yeah, I can imagine if you were to have real anxiety about it, that must be quite scary, really.
It is, but the biggest thing that's helped me, as simple as it sounds, is talking about it. So the more I talk about it, not only do the more I understand myself, we're talking to people like you, but also I feel like it feels more acceptable, and the more I feel that it's acceptable, the less anxiety it causes. So most of my friends now know that I have dyscalculia, and obviously my family does. I would suggest that you get some really good friends in your life for a start, because I've got some friends that I would say, okay, so we've jumped into a taxi and someone says, I'll get this, pay me back later. I have no idea how much I owe that person. And then I say to them, how much do I owe you? And they say £5, and I believe them and I give them £5. Now, those are really kind of like simple things to do for yourselves to get friends. But sometimes it's taking that edge off the anxiety, to make you feel more comfortable. And it's one of those things that is really specific to your type of, or your degree of dyscalculia that you have. I have a problem writing number down. So I check numbers in different sequence. So say, for example, I've got a number that is 10 digits long. If I'm typing it, so I've got it written down and I'm typing it into a computer, I would type that whole 10 numbers, and then I'd go back and I'd look at each of the two. So I'd look at the first two numbers, check the first two numbers are right, second two numbers, etc. Then I'd go back and I'd check them in threes.
Well,
and then I'd go back and probably check them in fours, so that when I know that I haven't got two of those digits the wrong way around, sometimes I still do, yeah. But when you double check things, double check them in a different way to the way that you did before. So when you're checking number, and so it's, or get people to read out numbers.
See, that's making me think of a question that I had for you, because what I'm really conscious of then is like, how can I communicate better with clients I have that might have this issue? They don't know and I don't know. So one of the questions that popped into my head is, invariably, I am going to have to mention a number at some point when I'm dealing with clients. And often, let's say it's a report. And what I was wondering is, does it make a difference if I write the word of the number rather than the actual number?
To me, it does. And seeing TWO instead of the number 2 makes it easier for me to understand. However, it doesn't make it any easier for the quantity. So if you wrote down 2,464 and then wrote it in letters, I would be able to access that quite easily, but I wouldn't be able to relay that number to you anyway, because regardless, once it's in my brain, it's then a number.
So it has no meaning attached to it.
It's got no meaning attached to it.
Oh, okay. Right. So
I'm sure some people find it easier one way or another. And, it probably differs from person to person. But for me, reading the numbers is easier, but actually retaining and relaying those numbers is exactly the same as if there would be digits.
Okay, let me roll something else past you then, right? Because all my clients, all their money is in buckets. Okay.
Oh, yes.
It's all buckets. So I'm doing a report for a client and I'm updating them on how the bucket is doing. Mm-hmm. So whereas previously I'd have said, like, you've got £50,000 in your general investment account, blah, blah, blah. And that's goes right over your head, because it was 50000. So if I write the word £50,000 in your GIA, like, okay, I know the number now. I can remember the number. No idea what she's on about. If I draw a picture of the bucket in my report and I write the words 55 or however much it was, £50,000 in your general bucket, is it sticking anymore now?
I tell you what does work if you're talking about thousands is K.
Right.
For me, 5K, 10K, 3K, that works better in my head than all the zeros after it or in Word.
Okay.
But I would, when you display that information, you wouldn't necessarily need it in a bucket. I think it's quite a nice idea. It's probably a good thing to put on a report. You wouldn't necessarily need it in an actual bucket, but dividing it up on the report itself. So if I had a report and it had a list saying in your buckets are, and it had a list of things that we made, that wouldn't make as much sense as if it was in a table or was in boxes,
Right.
so that it's broken up and say, so that I can easily access with my, if you think about looking at the page, I can visually access each of those buckets.
Right.
That makes more sense to the way my brain works than if it was in a list or in a paragraph.
All right. That's really helpful. Now, Jennifer, I'm wondering if you've got any questions because you're coming at it from a mortgage point of view, which is slightly different to me.
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing for me is going to be what's the best thing that removes the fear for you. So if you're going to go and speak to someone about your mortgage or your pension or anything, and you are worked up and anxious about it, what's the best thing that we can be doing that's going to immediately make you feel more comfortable?
So normally, if I do go to things like this, I take someone with me, which it doesn't really answer your question because they normally help me. But if you are looking at trying to help someone to best understand, like on a one-to-one basis, as you've said, making sure that you pause before and after numbers so that people can have time have that extra time to process. Because sometimes I find, and this might link to my ADHD, so I can't say that it would work for everyone or not work for everyone. Sometimes I process number, because I don't process number well, sometimes it takes longer than other times. So first thing in the morning, don't speak to me about a number because it's just bouncing off my skull. It's not going in at all. In the afternoon, it speeds up. So, and that's personal to me, obviously. But if you pause before and after, and for example, I don't actually know your process that you go through, but if you're having a conversation with someone and you were saying to them, so the total mortgage that you will be taking is, and then paused before saying the number and then paused just after the number, that would give them a little bit more processing time to be able to understand it, because it is really about that number. It's not about all the words around it.
Mm.
Absolutely. No, that's a good thing. I think and it's pretty easy, I guess, for me to implement that, because if it's, 1 in 20 or however many it is, people that have it,
Yeah.
you could be sitting in front of lots of people that have got no idea. So even that little pause is just giving them that little bit of breathing space.
And I mean, I'm sure you already do this, but asking, do you want me to go back over any of the numbers, etc.? But I'm sure you do that part of your work in practice anyway. But that
Absolutely
that helps,
because
because
I
I
don't know
always
if
think,
anyone's too embarrassed to discuss anything or too anxious to say
Yes.
anything in front of you. So, but no, perfect. That's good.
I always think it'd be so much easier, wouldn't it, if we all wore a T-shirt that said, what our obias or our, isms or
I don't know what mine
axios
would
are.
say, Emily.
I just think life would
I
be so
know what
much
yours would say,
easier
Julie.
because we've all got them.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. It is one of those things. But going back to what Jeff said, I'm the kind of person who would now, if you'd have asked me 10 years ago, someone would have explained a mortgage or a loan or something, and I'd have gone, and then I'd have gone home and kind of like looked at the piece of paper and gone, now I need to work out what they were talking about. And have I said I'd do something that I really didn't want to do? And that obviously would make me anxious. Nowadays, they would get to that point where they say, do you want us to go over everything? And I say, yes, all of that bit, I need you to go over it slow because I have dyscalculia. And that's not something that I was able to do 10 years ago or, 20 something years ago when I found out that I had dyscalculia. That wasn't something that I was really comfortable talking about. I'd rather just push it aside,
So can I just ask, though, I mean, obviously now it sounds like it is important for you to understand these things, because I think I have a number of clients where they probably have similar problems to what you have. But yeah, instead of saying, I'm sorry, I don't understand because I've always had difficulty with numbers and da da da, they will look at me blindly, nod and smile. And I will say to them, would you like me to say that again? Or should I say it differently? And I always drum in to say, look, it's my job to make sure that you understand. And if you understand,
Yes.
it's me that's not doing my job properly. So and no question is a stupid question. So I say all of this, but they still, and it actually, with hindsight now, breaks my heart that they could still be going away from that meeting not understanding. Yeah, it's just really, yeah,
I mean,
we should be more open. We should say, actually, I was speaking to someone the other day and they've got this thing called Dyscalculia, and, say that we're aware of it. And then they might say, oh, yeah, maybe I've got some problems in that area as well.
yeah. But I mean, I suppose it goes back to the kind of wearing a t-shirt type thing. So my background is in school. So I was a teacher and I was an assistant head for years. And we had lanyards that had, whether we spoke Welsh or not, because I live in Wales, we had lanyards whether we had experience with ADHD or whether we had experience with autism, so that the children could recognize us instantly and knew who to access. And I mean, we can't put that into although we can't put that into the entire, society. There is maybe something in, a dyslexia, dyscalculia badge type thing that shows that you understand these difficulties, and maybe there's something in that. Maybe I need to go up and find out whether it exists, and if it doesn't exist, maybe I need to create one so that people who with dyscalculia know that you will understand if they're struggling with that money conversation.
Right. No, I just want to say thank you, Zoe, for being so open with us, because I just think it's such a powerful thing that we all go out into the world every day and we've got no idea how the person sitting next to us, their brain works and how it might work differently to us. And it's all to do with how we communicate with people and how can we make people feel safe
Mm.
actually start engaging with the money. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, I thought I was just rubbish at numbers, maybe I'm not, then know that there is no need for any shame. And that, we get that it's scary, but there are plenty of people out there. So people like myself and Jennifer and Emily, good place to start is always a financial coach, because that's going to be a really non-judgmental space for you to start engaging with money if you want to. And I think Jennifer mentioned the stat that, okay, I'm going to try and do this in a dyscalculia friendly way. I'm going to give a stat. Okay. Apparently, if you walk into a room and there are 20 people in the room, one of them is going to have dyscalculia. Did I do that in a dyscalculia friendly way?
You did. You did. Well done. That was excellent. That's much easier to understand than 1 in 20 are. And you can you rush over. Yeah.
So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh, then it isn't just you. You're not alone. And there's nothing wrong with you. It's just your brain works a little bit differently. And the rest of the world needs to catch up so it can engage with you better. So I think, Zoe, you're an absolute superstar and legend for sharing all this with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed this.
All right. And Zoe, if people are interested in finding out more about what you do and how to be a sort of a superb leader and a conscious leader, what's the best way for them to follow you or get in touch?
So all my socials are / Zoe Brinn. That's BRINN. And I have the unique name, so no one has that yet. And I'm across all the socials. Or you can visit zoebrinn.co.uk and find out how to contact me there.
All right. Thank you, Zoe. So, Emily, what's the big takeaway you're taking away from this episode?
Oh, I would say that it is a continuum. Hello, are you still there? Something's gone blank. The screen went blank. It's a continuum, and I think we've all got a little bit of it. And I'm really glad that you voiced it, because I feel a bit better now about the fact that I've got a little bit of it. But yeah, we live. There's other things we're good at. It's
No
fine.
fear, no fear, no judgment.
Yeah.
All right. And Jennifer, what's your takeaway?
Probably have two. So I would say on the recruitment side, putting my brand out to make sure that I am getting the right fit for the people that fit my values as a small business. That's not something I think I really did do with my previous hires. And also then on the other side, getting new ways to make sure my clients are actually managing and understanding everything that I'm saying. So whether or not that is adding in a pause after the number or even adding just K after the number.
Mm. All right. And I think for me, so I think people have heard me talk before. I've got my communication preference tool I use for clients when they engage with me. It's like, how do you like information presenting to you? So I'm probably just going to go back and revisit that with this particular focus on numerical data. Because it's mostly like, do you like bullet points? Do you like long paragraphs? Do you want me just to talk at you? But I'll maybe go and rethink how I'm going to say to them, like, what about the numbers? Because there's no getting away there's numbers involved. How shall we do the numbers in a way that works for you? So that has been really, really enlightening. Zoe, thank you so much again for sharing this really, really important message with the listeners. For everybody that's listening, if this has resonated with you, and you're like, I just need to know that people understand, then you can always get in touch with us. Drop us a message to the Women in Money Cafe at gmail.com. If you've enjoyed the episode, you know what I'm going to ask you to do, don't you? You need to go and leave a review, please. It makes a really big difference to us if you leave a review. But until then, thank you very much for listening and take care.